G'day and welcome. I'm so glad you've taken the time to listen to this story. Whether you're here for the journey or to help you drift off to sleep, I truly appreciate it. This story will be released in parts, with about 4 chapters at a time, so if you're tuning in early, you might need to wait for the next chapters to be released. No matter what brings you here, whether it's to relax or to dive into the story, I'm chuffed to have you along. I hope you find it intriguing and relaxing enough to come back for more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride. Roots and wings. Amelia had been in Longreach for a few months now, and though she still didn't feel entirely like she belonged, she was starting to find her place. The school had become more than just a job, it was becoming a home. And as she slowly settled into her role, something unexpected began to happen. She started to make a difference in the lives of the students in ways she hadn't imagined. It all started with the after-school program. Margaret had suggested the idea one evening over a cup of tea, pushing Amelia to step outside her comfort zone and offer something extra for the kids. They need a space where they can express themselves, something beyond the usual lessons, she had said. You're creative, Amelia. You've got this. At first, Amelia wasn't sure. She was still finding her feet as a teacher, still adjusting to the rhythms of the school. But Margaret's encouragement, along with the quiet pressure of knowing the kids would benefit, convinced her to give it a shot. The program was small at first, just a handful of students interested in drawing, writing, and making things. But Amelia quickly discovered how powerful creative outlets could be. Her first project with the kids was simple, a collection of short stories and illustrations based on their favorite memories of Longreach. It was supposed to be a simple task, but the kids poured themselves into their work in ways Amelia hadn't expected. They brought in stories about their families, their pets, and the adventures they'd had exploring the surrounding land. Some were funny, some were heartfelt, and a few were downright bizarre. But every story was a glimpse into the worlds of the students she'd only just begun to know. As the weeks went by, the kids began to look forward to the after-school sessions, sharing their work with pride, laughing together as they created. Amelia felt something stir inside her, an unexpected sense of fulfillment. The simple act of teaching them to express themselves was proving to be just as rewarding as her formal lessons. She watched their confidence grow, their creativity flourish, and in return, she found herself growing too. Longreach wasn't just a place she had landed by chance, it was starting to feel like home. And these kids, these bright, curious souls, were part of the reason why. One afternoon, after a particularly inspiring creative session, Amelia was packing up the classroom when she heard a familiar voice from the doorway. "Hey, you've got a moment?" It was Jayden. Amelia looked up, her arms still full of papers and art supplies. "Sure, what's up?" Jayden stepped into the room, his usual easy confidence replaced by a sheepish grin. "I've got a bit of a situation. Thought you might be able to help." Amelia arched an eyebrow. "A situation? Do I even want to know?" "Well," he scratched the back of his neck, "I was helping my parents round up the sheep, and one of them got a little loose. She's out by the edge of town, and well, I'm no good at chasing animals in the middle of the night." Amelia's lips quirked into a smile despite herself. "So you want me to help you chase a sheep?" "I mean, if you're up for it." Jayden's grin returned, his tone a little lighter than usual. Amelia couldn't help it. She laughed. "This should be interesting. Lead the way, then." The evening air was cool as they trudged across the dirt road, flashlights cutting through the dark, trying to spot any sign of the wandering sheep. Jayden had warned her that it might take a while, but Amelia didn't mind. As they walked side by side, the tension that had existed between them seemed to evaporate. They chatted easily, the humor of the situation breaking down whatever awkwardness had lingered since their first meeting. I can't believe I'm chasing sheep in the dark, Amelia mused, shaking her head as they paused to check a distant paddock. This was not how I imagined my first few months in Longreach. Jayden laughed, a deep, warm sound. I get it. No one ever expects to be running after animals at night, but it kind of grows on you. Amelia looked at him, sensing something different about the way he spoke. You've been here for a while, huh? Born and bred. I mean, I've been around the world a bit, but Longreach has always been home. He paused. I don't think I could ever leave, not for long. Amelia felt a pang of something she wasn't ready to name. She had been trying to settle in, to find a place for herself here. But hearing Jayden speak so warmly about his roots made her realize just how different their experiences had been. She wasn't sure she was ready to feel so deeply connected to a place, especially one so far removed from the life she'd known before. The conversation drifted into comfortable silence as they searched the paddocks, their footsteps soft on the dry earth. Finally, after a few more minutes, they spotted the sheep, a stubborn creature content to wander just far enough from the fences to keep them on their toes. Gotcha! Jayden called triumphantly as he maneuvered the sheep back toward the gate, and Amelia couldn't help but cheer. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. As they walked back toward the truck, the stars shining above them, there was a sense of quiet camaraderie between them, something that had been building but hadn't yet fully bloomed. Thanks for the help, Jayden said, his voice softer now. I don't know what I would have done without you. Amelia smiled. You're welcome. This wasn't exactly the kind of help I had in mind when I became a teacher, but I guess every day's a new adventure. Jayden gave her a sidelong glance, his expression unreadable for a moment before he cracked a smile. That's the spirit. The drive back to town was filled with easy conversation, and as Amelia got out of the truck, she realized how much she'd enjoyed the evening. Not just the sheep chasing, but the unspoken understanding that had developed between them. For the first time, she wasn't sure where things might be headed, but for once, it didn't feel like something she needed to figure out just yet. As the weeks passed, Amelia found herself more firmly rooted in Longreach, her after-school program growing more successful, and her relationship with Jayden slowly transforming into something more complicated and possibly more meaningful. She began to realize that perhaps her life here wasn't just about teaching. It was about building connections, about finding those unexpected moments of joy and vulnerability, and about allowing herself the space to grow, both personally and professionally. Longreach, with its dusty roads and quiet charm, was no longer just a stop on her journey. It was becoming the place where her roots were growing deeper and her wings were finally starting to spread. Stepping stones. Amelia woke on Sunday morning with an unexpected lightness in her chest. The day's plans played over in her mind, bringing with them a mix of excitement and nerves. A walk along a scenic trail wasn't anything groundbreaking, but it felt significant, like a small shift towards something she wasn't ready to name. In the kitchen, Margaret was busy spreading marmalade on her toast when Amelia wandered in. Margaret looked up, raising an eyebrow. "You're up early for a Sunday." Amelia shrugged, pouring herself a coffee and hoping she sounded casual. "Thought I'd get a head start on the day." Margaret smirked knowingly, her toast forgotten. "Uh-huh. Does this early start have anything to do with a certain grazier picking you up later?" Amelia groaned, her cover blown. "It's just a walk, Margaret. Don't make a big deal out of it." Margaret leaned back in her chair, her grin widening. "If you say so. But if I were you, I'd wear that blue sundress you got last month. You look lovely in it." "Good grief," Amelia muttered, hiding her smile behind her coffee cup. Margaret's relentless teasing was as exasperating as it was endearing. Jayden arrived on the dot, pulling up in a dust-streaked ute that looked like it had seen its fair share of adventures. He hopped out and greeted her with an easy smile. "You ready for this?" he asked, tipping his hat. "As I'll ever be," she replied, climbing into the passenger seat. The ute bumped along the dusty track as they headed out of town, Jayden pointing out local landmarks and sharing bits of trivia along the way. "See that windmill over there?" he said, gesturing toward a weathered structure. "My grandfather built that back in the 60s. Still standing, still working." "That's incredible," Amelia said, genuinely impressed. "It must mean a lot to your family." Jayden nodded, his expression thoughtful. "It does. It's part of our story, you know, keeps us grounded." The conversation meandered like the road ahead, easy and natural, flowing from stories about the town to their hopes for the future. When they reached the trailhead, the landscape stretched out before them, a mix of wildflowers, gum trees, and open sky. They set off, the crunch of their footsteps on the dirt path blending with the faint buzz of cicadas in the warm afternoon air. As they walked, Jayden opened up about his life on the property, the long days, the pressures of keeping up with the modern world while honoring his family's legacy. Amelia, in turn, shared her experiences at the school, her initial fears of not being enough for her students, and the surprising joy she'd found in helping them discover their creativity. "Sounds like they're lucky to have you," Jayden said, his tone warm and sincere. Amelia glanced at him, a little taken aback. "Thank you. That means a lot." Their easy rhythm was interrupted by an unexpected commotion near the riverbank. A small calf had somehow managed to get itself stuck in a muddy ditch, its plaintive cries carrying through the air. "Looks like someone's in a bit of trouble," Jayden said, already heading toward the stranded animal. Amelia followed, her concern evident. "What should we do? Should we call someone?" Jayden shook his head, rolling up his sleeves. "Nah, we'll sort it out. Just need to give it a bit of encouragement." The encouragement turned out to be a messy, chaotic affair. Jayden climbed into the ditch, trying to guide the calf, while Amelia attempted to keep it calm from the edge. At one point, the calf gave a sudden lurch, splattering both of them with mud. Amelia couldn't help but laugh, the absurdity of the situation breaking through her initial worry. "This is not how I imagined today going." Jayden, equally mud-covered, grinned back at her. "Welcome to the glamorous world of cattle wrangling." Eventually, with a lot of effort and a little luck, the calf scrambled free, letting out an indignant moo before trotting off toward a nearby paddock. Jayden climbed out of the ditch, brushing mud off his hands. "You handled that like a pro," he said, his voice tinged with admiration. Amelia laughed, shaking her head. "I think I'll leave the calf wrangling to you next time." They continued to the riverbank, finding a shady spot beneath a towering gum tree to sit and clean themselves up as best they could. Despite the muddy detour, the moment felt intimate, the kind of quiet connection that didn't need words. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the sky blazed with hues of gold and orange, casting a warm glow over the water. They sat in comfortable silence, the day's events settling around them like a soft blanket. "Thanks for today," Amelia said softly, breaking the quiet. "It was unexpected but good." Jayden turned to her, his gaze steady. "Anytime, Amelia. You're good company." Their eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. There was something unspoken in the air between them, something fragile but unmistakably real. When Jayden dropped her off at the house later that evening, Margaret was waiting in the living room, her curiosity practically radiating from her. "So how was it?" she asked, barely disguising her grin. Amelia hesitated, then smiled. "It was nice, really nice." Margaret's eyes twinkled. "Mud and all?" "Even with the mud," Amelia admitted with a laugh, kicking off her boots. As she climbed into bed that night, Amelia replayed the day's events in her mind. Whatever was happening between her and Jayden, it felt like the start of something, and for the first time in a long while, she was ready to see where it might lead. Ripples in the dust. Life in Longreach was settling into a rhythm for Amelia, but even she had to admit that some days felt more like a whirlwind than a calm routine. Between her teaching duties, the after-school creative program, and the occasional run-ins with Jayden, her once quiet world now buzzed with an energy she hadn't expected. The latest ripple came in the form of the annual Longreach charity auction, an event Margaret enthusiastically declared as the social highlight of the year. "People go all out for this," Margaret said, dropping a flyer onto the kitchen counter one morning. "It's a fundraiser for the Flying Doctor service, but really, it's just an excuse for the town to dress up, drink champagne, and spend money on questionable art." Amelia picked up the flyer, eyeing the bold lettering advertising food, fun, and fabulous finds. Her stomach sank a little at the thought of mingling with half the town in a formal setting. "Do I have to go?" Margaret shot her a look. "Of course you do. You're part of the community now. Besides, it's a good chance to let your hair down, and maybe bid on something fun." Amelia sighed. "I suppose you've already RSVP'd for me." "Obviously," Margaret said with a smirk. When the night of the auction arrived, Amelia found herself standing in front of her wardrobe, debating whether her little black dress was too simple for the occasion. Margaret appeared in the doorway, already dressed in a bold emerald green outfit, her makeup flawless. "Stop fussing," Margaret said. "You look great. Jayden will think so too." Amelia rolled her eyes, but she couldn't deny the flutter in her chest at the mention of his name. The charity auction was held in the town hall, its wide space transformed with twinkling fairy lights and rustic decorations. The hum of conversation and the occasional burst of laughter filled the air as townsfolk admired the donated goods on display. Amelia wandered through the crowd, exchanging greetings and polite small talk. She couldn't help but feel a little out of place, but Margaret's reassurances replayed in her mind. "You're part of the community now." She stopped in front of a table displaying handmade quilts, admiring the intricate stitching, when a familiar voice broke through her thoughts. "You bidding on one of those?" Amelia turned to find Jayden standing a few feet away, dressed in a crisp button-down shirt that made him look simultaneously polished and relaxed. "I was just looking," she said, feeling the faintest blush rise to her cheeks. "Well, if you bid on one, I might have to outbid you," he teased, his grin easy and disarming. Amelia laughed. "I don't think you'd have to try too hard. My budget's not exactly auction-friendly." "Good thing it's for charity," he said with a wink. "Makes splurging feel noble." They continued to meander through the displays together, the conversation flowing as naturally as it had on their walk. Amelia found herself relaxing in his presence, the initial tension of the evening melting away. When the auction began, Jayden disappeared briefly, reappearing with 2 glasses of champagne just as the bidding got underway. "Here," he said, handing her one, "to make the competition more interesting." As the auctioneer called out bids for items ranging from hand-carved furniture to vintage tractors, Amelia couldn't help but be swept up in the lively atmosphere. The townsfolk were passionate bidders, their enthusiasm filling the room with energy. Midway through the auction, a particularly gaudy painting of a windmill, rendered in neon pinks and greens, went up for bidding. Amelia stifled a laugh as the auctioneer extolled its unique artistic vision. "You should bid on it," Jayden said, nudging her lightly. "I wouldn't dare," she whispered back. But Jayden raised his hand anyway, grinning mischievously. "Do I hear $50?" the auctioneer called. Amelia gasped. "Jayden, $50 from the gentleman in the back," the auctioneer said. "Stop!" she hissed, her face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and amusement. Jayden leaned closer, his voice low. "Relax. I won't make you hang it in your classroom, unless you want to." The bidding war that followed was short-lived, and Jayden walked away the proud owner of the eye-searing masterpiece. "This is your fault, you know," he teased as he carried the painting back to their table. I refuse to take any responsibility for that, Amelia said, laughing. As the evening wound down, Amelia found herself standing outside the hall with Jayden, the cool night air a welcome relief after the warmth of the crowd. "Thanks for tonight," she said, her voice soft. "I wasn't sure I'd enjoy it, but I did." "I'm glad," Jayden said, his gaze steady on hers. "You fit in here, Amelia, whether you realize it or not." Her heart fluttered at his words, but she kept her tone light. "Even if I'm responsible for terrible art purchases? Especially then," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. As they said their goodbyes, and Amelia headed home with Margaret, her thoughts lingered on Jayden's words. For the first time, she felt not just welcome in Longreach, but truly at home. And maybe, just maybe, there was room for something or someone more in her life. The outback storm. The morning sky in Longreach was deceptively clear, the kind of endless blue Amelia had come to associate with the outback. But by lunchtime, dark clouds loomed on the horizon, casting an eerie shadow over the town. The weather shifted rapidly, the air thick and heavy with the promise of rain. By the time school was out, the storm had arrived, the sky split by jagged streaks of lightning and the rumble of thunder rolling across the plains. Inside the school, Amelia stood by the window of her classroom, watching the rain hammer against the glass. She could hear the worried murmurs of her students, some clutching their bags and glancing nervously at the darkening sky. Others, too young to fully understand the risks, seemed more thrilled than scared, giggling at the loud claps of thunder. "Miss, is it safe to go home?" one boy asked, his voice trembling slightly. Amelia knelt to his level, her voice calm and steady. "We're perfectly safe here. The school is sturdy, and the rain will pass soon, but for now, we're going to stay inside until we hear from your families." She stood and addressed the class. "Okay, everyone, let's settle in. We'll play some games and work on a project until the storm eases up." As the children slowly relaxed, she felt a surge of determination. She'd promised herself to be someone these kids could count on, and this was her chance to prove it. The storm, however, didn't let up. By mid-afternoon, news came that several roads had been washed out, leaving some parents unable to collect their children. The principal called a meeting with the staff, and it was decided that the stranded students would stay at the school until the roads were clear. Amelia volunteered to oversee the group, organizing blankets, snacks, and games to keep the children occupied. "It's like a sleepover," she told them, her tone light-hearted, "and I'm in charge of the fun." Her nerves, however, were beginning to fray. The sound of the rain drumming on the roof seemed louder with every passing minute, and she couldn't help but wonder if she was in over her head. By early evening, the sound of a ute pulling to the school's muddy driveway broke through the storm's roar. Amelia looked out to see Jayden climbing out, his hat pulled low against the rain. He was carrying a large bag of supplies. "What are you doing here?" she asked when he stepped inside, shaking water from his coat. "Figured you could use a hand," he said simply, setting the bag down. Inside were lanterns, extra blankets, and even a thermos of soup. "Roads are a mess, but I know the back ways." Amelia was touched but tried to keep it professional. "Thank you. The kids will appreciate this." As they worked together to set up a cozy space in the school's library, Amelia found herself stealing glances at Jayden. He was calm and resourceful, effortlessly reassuring the children with his easy smile and quick wit. Watching him, she felt a pang of admiration, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. Later, after the children had settled down for the night, Jayden and Amelia sat on the floor of the library, leaning against a bookshelf. The dim glow of the lanterns cast soft shadows on the walls. "You're good with kids," Amelia said, breaking the comfortable silence. Jayden shrugged. "Grew up with a lot of cousins. You learn how to keep them entertained, or risk chaos." She laughed softly, then hesitated before asking, "Why did you come out here tonight?" You didn't have to." Jayden looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "Because you were here, and I figured you'd be the type to take it all on yourself." The words hung in the air between them, the storm outside now a distant hum. Amelia felt her cheeks warm, but she held his gaze. "Well," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I'm glad you did." For a moment, the world outside seemed to fade away. Then a child's sleepy voice called out for her, breaking the spell. Jayden stood, offering her a hand. "Guess we'd better get back to it." As they returned to the children, Amelia couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them. The storm might have tested her limits, but it had also brought an unexpected clarity about her place in Longreach, and about the man who was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Thank you so much for giving your time and attention to this part of the story. It means the world to me. If you enjoyed the journey so far, please take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. What parts resonated with you? Did anything stand out, make you laugh, or move you? If you have feedback on ways I can improve or ideas for future stories, I'd love to hear them. Your insights not only help me grow as a storyteller, but also inspire new adventures to explore. Until we meet again in the next part of this tale, I wish you relaxation, peacefulness, and moments of joy in your own journey.